It's to chop. It's to chop.
Chop. Chop. Chop.
Mess. Messy mess. Beautiful mess. Come on. Let's see if we can make it back.
Billions is finally back, and right off the bat we got this great scene with Axe and Wags. And really at this point it's these guys acting, including Paul Giamatti, that has kept me going in this show, because when it comes to the plot, it's been a little rough. But we're going to talk about that along with the whole ayahuasca trip that they went on in this episode and what that means for Axe going forward in this series. Did it change him? Are we going to get some character development or not? Also, if you like these Billions videos, if you could do me a favor and share them, because I don't know what happened, but I think our whole Billions community that we built up over the last 2 years, they kind of disappeared. But I mean, you know how it is with the YouTube algorithm. You never know what's going to happen, can't control anything. And just YouTube in general. Have you noticed how the comments have changed? Terrible. So if that's the case and no one's watching anymore, then I guess I'll stop making these videos. So share if you can, like on Twitter with some hashtags, or you could even post the video in that Billions Reddit. That way you could watch me get torn up by the Reddit community. And I just appreciate how Reddit keeps you so humble, because you guys have been here, you've watched my meteoric rise to become the #1 finance YouTuber with almost 35,000 subscribers, which I know, it's an incredible number. And yeah, it has gone straight to my head, so it's nice to have Reddit there to just knock me down a few pegs. That way I could still relate to the common man, even as I sit upon this self-proclaimed glorious throne. Reddit keeps you honest. And before we get started, of course, the Explosive Stocks checklist, you could download that for free. There's a link down below in the description and comments. It will show you how to find the best stocks in this market right now, or at least our team strategy of how we do it. Link down below in those comments that are now hidden. So good luck. Thanks, YouTube. So that whole tent scene in the beginning of this video, that was Wags and Axe taking their ayahuasca trip. And ayahuasca is a hallucinogenic from South America. It's from the Amazon, so exotic. Look at it right here, it looks like a bowl of porridge. Now the great thing that we all love about Billions is that it's basically wealth porn. We get to see what all the rich people are doing. What's the latest trend? And once again with the ayahuasca, they got it right. And this is not just a trend for rich people, but this is happening all over the place. And the trend is hallucinogens. So drugs, but not just for partying, but actually for therapy and for taking yourself to the next level in terms of performance, or at least that's what some people try to do. Like I figure that's what Axe and Wags were trying to do. But of course they take drugs for other reasons too. If you remember that hot tub scene in the past season, right when Axe finalizes his divorce, he walks into his penthouse and Wags has a plate full of pills for him, and then naked girls in a hot tub, which, you know, that's a great party. But anyway, this is a trend that I'm pretty excited about. When I say hallucinogens, I don't just mean ayahuasca. I mean like LSD, you know, acid, mushrooms, even ecstasy. And I know that hallucinogens might not be the technical name for all of those, but that's what we're going to use in this video, because a bunch of them have been used recently for breakthrough treatments for a multitude of mental problems, and they've shown incredible results. They've been able to rewire people's brains for the long term with these drugs. And I said mental problems, that sounds a little bad, but what I actually mean is like soldiers coming back from war, if they have PTSD, this treatment has been shown to help them. Same with people with severe depression or severe anxiety. Even with addiction, like with alcoholics and smokers, they go through this treatment where they take these drugs and then all of a sudden that addiction is gone. They can never smoke or drink again. And I know this sounds like some magic, wonderful cure-all drug. It's not, but there are studies that are trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And these studies have really been picking up in the last few years. You might know Tim Ferriss. He's one of the biggest proponents of doing this research because he's seen the effects and how beneficial it can be. He's been talking about it a lot, and he's actually personally funded these studies as well. Now, there's still a long way to go for this to get fully approved by the government, but within the next decade, we might see it happen. And it's looking like it's going to change a lot of lives, so it's really interesting. Now, I personally don't have any life-changing experience from these things. I only experienced the dark downside. It was short-lived, don't worry, I'll tell you about it in a minute. But I have multiple friends who have started experimenting with these things, and they've got some great results. Even my partners in macro ops, Alex and Tyler, they've been diving into it and seeing good results. So they're absolutely sold on it. And even you might know that YouTube channel, Charisma on Command, the guy who runs it, Charlie, they released a course 2 years ago called Emotional Mastery, which which they're about to release again, I think. So you should definitely take it if you have a chance. But it was incredible. I took it thinking I wasn't going to learn anything because, I'm pretty good at psychology. I have my own psychology course. I do this for a living in the stock market, and the stock market is all psychology. But Charlie is like super smart, always 10 steps ahead of where I want to go. So I trust whatever he recommends. So I took the course and it blew my mind. Like, I learned everything that I was doing wrong in life. I learned about Buddhism and attachments and even addictions and letting go. All this stuff that's completely counterintuitive to a type A personality like myself. And I took that course 2 years ago, and I still think about it every day, the things that I learned there. And I work on it every day because it's not easy at all. And normally psychology stuff, it's easy for me just because I had all this experience in the market. But this stuff that I learned in that course, not so much. So I talk to Charlie every now and then since I've taken the course. And the last time that I talked to him, he was explaining to me what he's doing next to help people with the material in that course. Because he really dives deep, like he knows it's hard. So it's like, what's the next step to teach people this stuff? And sure enough, he's been researching these same tools that we're talking about in this video. So from what I understand, these hallucinogens are almost like a shortcut to all the difficult concepts that you got to learn and apply from that course. And what I'm talking about is like a lot of Buddhist teachings. So when you see a monk sitting there completely just calm and happy, he's reached that enlightenment stage where you let go of all your attachments, you have a completely different outlook on life. It takes a lot of deep work and it's easier said than done. Like I said, I'm still working on it. But supposedly these tools are really effective at getting you there faster, or at least giving you a glimpse of what's possible. And like I said before, people with addictions have been cured, like smoking, drinking, all that. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what's so interesting, and I'm glad all this research is being done now. And don't worry, I'm going to explain the process of ayahuasca and what happens and what causes all these changes, or at least of what I know. But all I'm trying to express is that I'm excited that this might all get institutionalized. Okay, so ayahuasca. Here's how it works, at least from what people have told me. First, you gotta have your guide or your shaman. So in that tent, that guy who was chanting, that was Axon Wag's shaman. And the guide or shaman is very necessary because, as you'll see, ayahuasca can get very scary. You need someone there to hold you down in case things get too weird. So you drink this wonderful porridge right here, and then this happens. So yeah, it makes you sick and then you end up puking. Some people even crap their pants. Lots of fun. But they say it's the process of you expelling all the negative things in your life. And then once you puke, that's when the trip starts. That's when things start getting wild. And from what I know, ayahuasca is the most intense form of hallucinogens. So what happens is that you experience ego death. And it's a little bit wonky, but hear me out. When you think about the word ego, what do you think about? Oh, that guy has a big ego. He's super cocky. But the other way to look at ego is just a word for your sense of self. So the thought that I'm AK and I'm different from this microphone or another person over there, that is my ego. The thought that I'm an individual and a person and have an identity. And they say all the pain in your life comes from that sense of self. And by that, I mean everything tied to your identity and your ego, including your desires, your wants, your expectations, all those dirty things a good Buddhist throws out. It's like that saying goes, if you focus on yourself, you're only gonna suffer. If you focus on someone else or other people, that's what sets you free. So as you grow up in society, there's a lot of inputs, right? You get formed a certain way. And that formation does create your ego, your sense of self, right? Like, what type of person am I? I'm this type of person, which means I'm different from that and those things over there. Now, if you somehow had zero ego, which means zero sense of self, well, then you wouldn't see much difference between yourself and, say, the grass that you're walking on. And to the most enlightened monks and gurus, that's supposedly what happens. That's why they're on that higher level and see the connection between all the living things. Why the grass is no different than us. We're all just one thing. Life force, all that stuff. Now, I believe it, I just don't get it. But I'm willing to learn, which is why I'm interested in this stuff, no matter how sarcastic I sound. So when you take ayahuasca, what supposedly happens is that you watch your ego die. Now, keep in mind that each person's trip is going to be different, but from what I've been told, you basically experience your own death. Now, it's your ego that's dying, not your body, but up until this point, most people think that the ego is you. So it's crazy to see yourself dying, and it can be very scary experiencing your own death, obviously. That's why the shaman is there, because as you can imagine it could turn into a bad trip pretty fast. I don't think I've heard of any bad trips on ayahuasca, but I know people have said it's just extremely intense. So you come out of the experience as a different person with a whole new outlook on life because your ego was crushed, your sense of self, all those desires, wants, and expectations, all those things that you cared about before, gone. You realize they don't matter. So again, it looks very tempting because, okay, you could take ayahuasca or you could spend years and years meditating, doing a ton of deep work to get to that Buddhist level. Ayahuasca seems to take you there much quicker. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, like all of a sudden you become a monk. People actually go and do this multiple times, but it does reset you. So I think from what I understand, it is a process, it's just not one and done. And each time you do get a little better and you get a little further to your optimal self, your monk self. Now in Axe's case in this episode, I'm not really sure what went on with his ego death.
Kings, they don't blow around, man. They stand there and they take. First the village, then the city. Mass the troops for the keep. Then once the keep, yeah, the whole world. It's a whole lot of war to wage.
Maybe I didn't understand this scene right, and you should definitely comment down below with your opinion. But it seems like Axe became even more egocentric, like he was even more focused on world domination and taking over. So instead of the ego dying, it looks like it became stronger. But it does also seem that Axe recognized that. He seemed very disappointed after the experience, because like he said multiple times, I looked around and all I saw was ugliness. And when you're chanting about chopping off heads, that makes sense. He might be a little bit worried that that's what he saw. And he explained a bit of this when he talked to Wendy about it.
The ayahuasca? I had a moment of seeing the whole thing. From above, from inside, from a whole other dimension. But even from every vantage point, what I saw was ugliness. And while maybe I hadn't lost yet, there was no feeling that I'd won. None at all.
And that conversation brings up another point that we talked about in a previous video, how these guys, these high achievers, they keep chasing and chasing and chasing, but they're never happy. They never feel satisfied. And that's kind of the point of doing a trip like this, and just like Buddhism, is letting go of that attachment to success. But that's what I'm really looking for in this season, to see if that trip had any lasting impact on Axe, whether it actually changes him. Because that's one of the reasons why we watch these shows, right? We want some character progression. We want them to evolve and change somehow. It's only the first episode of the season, but based on what I saw, I don't think it's gonna happen. I mean, we wouldn't exactly have a show if all of a sudden Axe became a Buddhist, right? Because I mean, what happened last season? The whole season, Axe and Chuck were a team, and then all of a sudden, what was it, like the last episode, Chuck wakes up one day and he's like, man, I hate Axe again. And then Axe is like, you know what? I hate that guy too. And then it's like, oh, okay, great. Within like 5 minutes, all of a sudden the show changed back to what it already was before. So much for progression. And then Taylor is still Taylor, the robot. Expressions, negative. Emotions, negative. What is love? That's another crazy thing about this plot. In the last episode, right, the season finale, I think it was, we found out that Taylor is going to work with Chuck to be a mole in Axe's firm. Then in the first episode of this season, all of that is unraveled already. Axe is like, hey Taylor, you're working with Chuck, aren't you? Taylor's like, yeah, but now I think I'm going to work with you. And then immediately Chuck knows too. Oh, there's been a triple cross. So I guess everyone just knows everything immediately. It's a great way to move the plot forward fast. And then you had Axe's team and Taylor's team coming together over this wrestler's corny speech. And Wendy's like, yeah, we have fun. This is just a Tuesday. Come on. So although I think this would have been a great opportunity to explore how this trip has really changed Axe, and we could see his progression throughout the season, get some character development, and that would have been cool because it would have put these hallucinogens more on the map and more people would know about it, maybe support some more research. But I doubt that's going to happen because of the way the plot has been going in this show nowadays. But again, it's only the first episode, so who knows? And it's like the saying goes, lower your expectations and you won't be disappointed. That also happens to be one of my most effective pickup lines, because ladies love honesty and ladies love AK. LLAK. That's what my mom calls me. But yeah, comment down below with what you think is happening in this show. And one more thing, don't watch this video and then go off and do a bunch of drugs thinking you're gonna change your life for the better. These things are still dangerous. You're better off waiting a few years for more research to be done and for more clinical things to happen, so you can go do it in a controlled setting that's legal, because this is still illegal. Wait for the science to catch up. It's a much safer bet. My personal experience that I told you about before, that was a rough one. And this is before I knew these things could be helpful. This was just like, hey, it's spring break, why not? But but it was 8 hours of hell for everyone involved. One guy tried to jump out of a window, which is funny in retrospect, but during the time, very scary, and maybe not so funny even in retrospect. It was a horrible, horrible time. I never touched anything like it since, but I'm still looking forward to like ayahuasca or something like that, but only when it's in a controlled setting. I'm fine waiting for the science to catch up because I hear it's even scarier than what I went through, and I think I'm fine holding on to my attachments for just a little bit longer, you know? I don't know if I can handle my ego death right now, because if my ego dies, will I still be the #1 finance YouTuber? It's my entire identity. Can't lose that. The good thing that did come out of that experience is now I understand much better what crazy people go through. And sorry, I shouldn't say crazy. I'm talking about people with actual diagnosed clinical issues. I had no control over my thoughts. I couldn't logic things out like I normally do. It was scary. And mine was just for 8 hours. For these other people, it's their life. So it completely changed my view on that issue and gave me way more empathy for what those people have to go through. So hey, the more research that we can do into this, like the better off. Like I said, it could help a lot of people. And actually, Sam Harris, the famous neuroscience author of Waking Up, he's a guy who's been exploring all this stuff too, and he expressed similar sentiments. He's like, once you have that trip, then you really understand what these people are going through. Moral of the story is don't go and try a bunch of stuff if you don't know what you're doing. Like if you hear a tech bro tell you that he's been microdosing and absolutely crushing it, you just gotta ignore it. Because you always gotta remember that 99% of Silicon Valley people are full of it and just love to talk and talk and talk. But it's all BS, so don't get tempted. Just wait a few years for it to become mainstream. It's happening right now thanks to guys like Tim Ferriss. And let me know what you think about all this in the comments. And don't forget, just please share this video so we can keep making them. And I know we talked very little about investing, but there was not much investing in that episode. So if you still want your dose of that, we got this explosive stocks checklist. All actionable, will teach you how to find the best stocks. It's free. There's a link down below in the description and comments. Grab that. And if you want more billions, subscribe, because we're going to do this whole season as long as people are watching. So you don't want to miss it. I will see you in the next video. Stay fallible out there. Bye.